Welcome to the ClassCast podcast, where philosophy, policy, pedagogy, and people come together in honest, purposeful conversations about improving school and education for our students and our communities. I'm your host, Ryan Tibbens, an award-winning English teacher, speaker, tutor, and podcast host in Northern Virginia. You can listen and subscribe to the ClassCast podcast on all major streaming services, on YouTube, and at classcastpodcast.com. Ladies and gentlemen, class is in session.
Works for you guys, but we're going to be talking about innovation that works here. So some of us are innovators, some of us know innovators, some of us want to be innovators. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. And so the first thing, I guess we should have people introduce themselves first, shouldn't we, Tudisco?
I mean, I guess, but we're all so famous, so I don't really see any point.
Yeah, it's pretty much true.
But
it's pretty
maybe
much...
maybe just for the statement, just to like
okay,
have it out there.
Yes, yeah. If you just want to like and this is not like Zoom, so everyone sees the same thing at the top, bottom, and middle, right? Whereas Zoom, you have your own view. So I think everyone sees the same thing. So we'll start with and we didn't lose anybody right now. So we'll start with the bottom, and we'll work for Ryan. So Ryan, go ahead, introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
All right, great. I'm Ryan Tibbens. I am the host of the ClassCast podcast. I'm a high school English teacher in Northern Virginia, and I'm looking forward to talking with all of these great minds and entertaining personalities this afternoon.
Okay, go ahead, Sandrine. Sandrine, can you hear me, or are you frozen? Oh, there's two Sandrine. Hey, there you go, Sandrine. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. So I'm Sandrine Hope. I am a French professor, so university level, and my podcast is called Step Into Mondays. And our bridge is that we bridge theory to practice. So we take ideas from what people say we should be doing, and which are often puzzling, and go like, well, that's how we do it. I don't know what else you had. I'm sorry. I kind of my internet.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. Okay. I guess we'll start with Toria on the second row there.
Hi, I'm Toria. On Twitter, I'm at Toria Claire, and I created the podcast Tiny Voice Talks, which is basically giving a platform to the tinier voices in education. There are many English voices, but there are also American voices. There are voices from over in the UIA. And so it's really great because it's become international, which is really exciting. Yes. So that's me. Oh, and I should point out that I am actually a teacher over here as well.
Okay, Batsheva, go ahead.
So, hi, I'm Batsheva Frankel, and I am an educational consultant, a veteran teacher of like over 25 years. And my company is New Lens Ed, and my podcast is Overthrowing Education.
Cool. Hit it, Gerardo.
What's up, everybody? Gerardo Munoz, he, him, his. I am the 2021 Colorado Teacher of the Year. I'm also the producer and co-host of Two Dope Teachers and Mike.
We miss you and love you, Kevin.
Yeah, Kev.
Okay. Lanny, I guess you can introduce yourself too.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lanny Cross. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am not a school teacher, but I do corporate learning and development. And I'm friends with Mealey Tudisco and here helping out today. Okay.
Okie dokie.
And depending on how demanding we are of you, we'll see if we're still friends tomorrow.
There we go.
If you stop talking to me, I accept.
Okay. All right, Tudisco, I guess we don't need to introduce ourselves because
I think we need to, just for posterity. We're all about posterity here.
Okay, yes. Oh, did you want to see my posterity?
I do not.
We're live streaming.
Please stop asking me that. I'm Tudisco. I'm in North Carolina. I teach English, currently teach middle school. I've taught middle school through high school. And I am co-host of Unprofessional Development.
Yeah, and I'm the other
Mealey?
host. Yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Mealey. I'm the other host of Unprofessional Development. And, shout out to my boy, the Angry Ginger from 7 Days a Geek, because he had this thing that's been going on for years called Podtoberfest. And I am a follower of his podcast, and he had this thing that he did back in October. And I'm like, ooh, we should do that with like education podcasters. And so I went and gathered up some education podcasters. We have like a group DM where we spread a lot of love and a lot of encouragement and nonsense. And then I said, hey, you guys want to do this Edupodlooza thing? And they're like, what is Edupodlooza? And
so you're saying this whole idea is just plagiarized?
Every idea is just plagiarized. That's you're an English teacher. You should know that.
There's nothing new under the sun.
No. That was
our man Billy the Shake.
It's all just like I said, the Wizard of Oz and whatchamacallit is just or Star Wars is just the Wizard of Oz. And then I also convinced someone recently on Twitter that that Cheers is just Gilligan's Island. So anyway.
I just want to clarify. Did you say that nothing new under the sun is William Shakespeare?
No,
wasn't it?
You did say that. No.
Am I wrong?
Yes.
Okay, correct me. What is that?
That's Samson, not Samson.
No, it's not.
No.
It's Kohelet. It's Ecclesiastes, I think.
Yes.
It's called in English.
Yeah, like who doesn't know that?
Right.
I've been confused a lot. Just a lot of these and thous.
No, David's.
Only
David's
if
son.
it's translated improperly.
David's son wrote it. What's David's son's name? Why am I blank? I always want to say
Solomon.
Solomon. I always get Samson and Solomon. I get those names jumbled in my head.
Yeah, very different.
Samson's the one that killed the people with the jawbone and brought the walls down. Yes.
Correct.
Who hasn't done that? At least
I know.
once. Like we have bad days.
School year.
Yes, that's what we're doing now. Right now, we're bringing the walls down, baby. Okay, so this is the roundtable. The topic that we're loosely going to base this on is going to be innovation that works. So we're going to kind of go around to each person, and if they can tell us something that they've done which is slightly different from what either they've seen other teachers do, or it's new. They could have stolen it from someone else, as we all do, but it could be different from what they've done in the past, so something they've changed in their practice, something that's different from their colleagues or the schools around them, and that they've seen some positive results. And this can be, pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, or something that they plan on implementing as we hopefully head back into a close to normal year in the fall. So let's go in reverse order. Can I go first?
I'll allow it.
It's my palooza. But anyway, I'll cry if I want to.
Palooza.
That's true. It's the world's palooza. But so anyway, so one of the biggest thing I was actually discussing with my children as to which is it going to be this or is it going to be that? It really blessed me. Hey, there's Mike. Hey, I hadn't even looked on the list. I forgot we were waiting for you, Mike. Welcome to the palooza, Mike. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Mike. I'm in Texas, and I'm hyped to be here.
Awesome. Tell us, give us like a 30-second bio, Mike, so people know who you are, and give your podcast a shout out.
Right. I host the Schoolish podcast, which is where I'm trying to have all these really difficult conversations about school out loud that people are not having, really, really uncomfortable ones. And that's because the nature of what I do is I kind of have uncomfortable conversations about education for a living. I work for the Reinvention Lab, which is a part of Teach for America, trying to change that organization. And I also work on school projects on the side and some ed tech stuff as well.
Cool.
Mike, I'm loving your background.
That's sweet. I'm impressed.
It's very reminiscent of paper cups from the mall in the 90s.
Yes, this is Stranger Things food court vibes is what I
owe. Wow. You guys see, I have the green screen ready, and I started, and I was so slow. I was like, I'm not going to be the guy that lags through this entire live discussion. That's why I barely signed in on time, because I was trying to get fancy, and now I've been outdone. Thanks, Mike.
But this is an app. This is a simple app. It's called Mm-hmm. That's the name of it. What? It's called Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
I think my
name
2-year-old
sound.
daughter invented
Just like the artist formerly known as mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
There's an
Campbell,
Abbott and
Campbell's soup.
Costello skit in
Good.
here somewhere.
Okay. Alrighty. So back to innovation that works. So Mike, just so you know, as we're getting started here, we're each going to take something that we've done different that from other teachers or other colleagues or other schools or whatever that has worked for us or our students. So as I said, I was told my 2 natural born children, not my school children, that I was going to be doing this. And my daughter was like, oh, are you going to talk about your room or are you going to talk about spiraling? And so I said, well, I don't know, maybe both. So my room real fast. And we're not going to go through sharing it, but if you ever want to see it, just let me know. My room looks kind of like a cafe. I have gone on Facebook Marketplace and asked people who were selling like bar stools and like cafe tables to donate them to my classroom. And it took me about a year or so to accumulate all of it. And I'm regularly having to doctor on them with tools and glue and things like that. But I also took the tabletops and I put whiteboard contact paper on top of there so that my students, and there's whiteboards literally on every wall in my classroom. So I use the common expression, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a whiteboard in my room. I'm sorry to Peter.
That was also Shakespeare.
And yes, and to Lou Diamond Phillips, who I know loves cats. But anyway, but so there's always access to whiteboards, and it really does, get the kids engaged, because there are kids who don't want to work on a worksheet or Chromebook or whatever, but you give them some different colored whiteboards and they will, they'll play on that. And so that's the one thing. And the other thing is spiraling my content, which I give shout out to. And they know a whole lot about it more than me. And they were on a guest on our podcast at one point, the Making Math Moments That Matter guys. That's an excellent math podcast. If you're a math teacher, you're looking for a math podcast to give you ideas how to be a good math teacher, I highly recommend that. And it's good for some other teachers too, but it's primarily math focused. But alrighty, so that's it. I talked way too long. Okay, I know. Okay. Go ahead, Tudisco. Tell us something innovative that you've done in the past year or so that works.
Nothing. I don't really do innovation.
That's innovative in itself. You're the uninnovator.
Stay with the comfy. So there are 2 things I like to do that I find help my classroom and I don't see enough other classrooms doing. One was an idea from one of my coworkers this year, and it just worked really well. And it has to do with writing essays, because when you write essays, when you assign kids to write essays, it's always a big mess. For those of you who are not English teachers, like some kids can knock it out of the park instantly and just get essays. And some kids are going to struggle with just what is a paragraph. It's such a wide range, and we don't focus a lot on grammar and things. So that's where you really start seeing the gaps of which kids read consistently and which kids don't. So my coworker gave me this idea, and I tried it this year, and it was awesome. And what we did is we did one class period where it was just, all right, here's the essay, write the draft, just right out of the gate. So just here's the prompt, give me 3 to 5 paragraph essay, and that's all we worked on that day. And so it was a lot of like front loading work, because then I have to read through all of those essays real quick. But you see which ones basically get it and might need a little tweaking and helping. You see which of them just know essays and awesome with it, and you see which ones really are struggling. And so then what we did is the kids who were able to do really solid on their essays, we could give them like little tips and help them focus on mostly a passion project throughout the next week, so we can sit through it the week with the kids who need you to sit there and hold their hand to help them fix that essay. And we did that with our first essay, and the other essays we wrote after that were so much more solid, because we were able to kind of build up the kids who needed the extra support. So that's one thing that we did this year that really worked. The other thing I always like doing that I don't see enough other teachers doing is whenever we have to read Shakespeare, because we always have to read Shakespeare, because like Shakespeare said, there's nothing new under the sun. That was him. What I like to do is I like to show them the movie first. You need to watch Shakespeare, and there's so much happening, and the language is dense enough to get through. So if we can show them the movie and they can see, okay, here are the characters, they can listen to the sound of the the lines and what the language and vocabulary sounds like, so it doesn't seem so foreign, because you just read it on a page, it's really much. And then when they see the actors acting it out and they see the progression, they see, oh, here's the good guy and here's the bad guy and all that sort of stuff, then you stop and you read through it, and that helps you go through and really dive into the language, because you already understand the plot and the characters. So those are my innovations.
Awesome.
By the way, let me jump in on the Shakespeare thing real fast. If for anybody who teaches plays at all, always show them at least part of it before. Like whether you do it, like I flip-flop. So I show them the beginning, then we read, then we watch a little piece, then we read, and then I flip it. Then we read, and then we watch. Because at that point, you should be comfortable enough. But the parallel, the reason, like when kids come in and like, oh, I got to read this. I read this guy last year, whatever. I'm like, there's a reason that everybody wants you to read it, though. Like, it's good, but it's hard. And so imagine if you were asked to read the script of your favorite television show. And so I've done this in the past. Like, I have a couple of screenplays for like random TV shows, and you have them read it and they get some of it, and they miss things that are like obvious laughs. Like they miss obvious jokes, and it's modern English. It's on at 8 o'clock at night, and then I like, you point out, like, how did you miss that joke? Like no one laughed. And like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, guys, it's because it's not meant to be read. No one writes a play for you to read it. They write a play for you to watch it. We write a TV show or a movie for you to watch it, right? So the reason that we read some of them is because they're so well written that there's some little details that are worth your attention. But that doesn't mean you just read the whole thing. And so like, I teach older students too, but really like sort of like sell them on that idea that like we're reading it because it's great, but we're going to watch it because that's really what it was meant for. Like Shakespeare never thought anybody was going to be reading his stuff. So the fact that we force everybody to do it is insane, but you can do this with any play, like any play at all. Like I said, it works just as well with the television shows it does with it. Like flip flop the order of watch and read and watch back and forth. And then remind them that the actual intent is for you to be watching it. We're only reading it so that you can sort of zone in on really great figurative language or strong word choice or whatever those things may be. And I found that
iambic pentameter, huh? I remember that.
But even that one, then kids, when they watch it, they don't pay as much attention to it. And then I say, like, you notice how like they end a couple of those lines funny, like the rhythm's a little funky. And they're like, yeah, I'm like, now let's read it, and then you can show them why. But that's huge. Like I think we do a great disservice to students when we have them read plays without watching either any of it or waiting until the end. Like watching it isn't a treat. Like watching it is what you're supposed to do with it.
Yeah, it's
sorry, I went out of order. I apologize.
No,
it's a really good idea.
And while you're on the mic, why don't you just tell us something innovative besides that? Which
that's it. It's the only thing I got. That's it. That's all I got. I can we flip flop the order of watching and reading. That's all I can do.
That's genius.
So I teach primarily 11th and 12th grade English classes. And the way we schedule stuff, I always request sort of. It's terrible, but the easy way to explain is high and low. Like, give me AP and give me your neediest students. Give me the kids who you're worried they're not going to pass the state test. Give me, whatever. Team taught classes. I had an ELL class last year. I had a team taught SPED class the year before, and that's sort of where I'm at. And so my innovation is really I have trouble with these questions because I'm rarely trying to do something new. I'm just trying to do something that works. But I think one of the ththings that works really well is because of the age of the students, I'm very honest with them. Like, here's what we're doing. And if we're doing something new, I tell them that. And if we're doing something like, guys, I've done this for, a few years in a row and this works really well, whatever. Like I treat them as though they're equal participants in it. Right. Like I don't give up the reins. Like I'm the teacher. I've got to make some calls here. Right. But in the end, I want you to recognize that you are like an intelligent and functional human being, that every kid in that room, if they really needed to, could just walk out of the building, go get a job and live their lives. Like there's nothing between them and that, except that all the other adults say they're not allowed to do that yet. Right. And so, but as a result, when I want to do something new, I can tell them that and I get really good buy-in because they don't think I'm trying to be fancy. I say, hey, here's this new thing. And I think it's going to work better. On the reverse side, sometimes we go very old school. Like I swear I could teach a very good English class with nothing but the Sunday newspaper and line paper and a pencil. Like I could teach you all the skills. I'm not saying it would be the most fun, but I could teach you everything you need to get from a good English class with a weekly newspaper and something to write on. Is that the ideal? No, it's not ideal, but yeah, it could work, right? And so anytime I approach,
I'm going to one up you. I could do it with just the funny papers and a crayon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, we really, I think sometimes, when we field a question like this about like, what's something innovative you do in school, I think sometimes, and it's an understandable mistake, but I think a lot of teachers sometimes get so fired up about trying something new or become beholden to an ideology or a certain new app I'm trying that all of a sudden, like, the tech came before the reason for it. Like someone building a house doesn't pick up a tool to say, I have to use my new tool. They pick up the right tool to do the job. And so I think in discussions,
well, unless they're the district, because the district loves to do that.
Well, but if you're the
right, because Tudisco does everything the district tells them to do.
right, yeah. But that's a big part of this too. Is I've hit a point in my career where I think enough people around me and my superiors respect what I'm doing, and they see we get good results. That sometimes I can say, like, we're not going to do that. We're going to do that a little bit differently here, and in the end, the results are good, so no one really gets to complain too much. If I bomb on something, then I have to apologize and go back. But we do a lot of that kind of stuff. I do a lot of philosophy. It's an English class. We do a ton of philosophy.
Ryan,
I wanted to think. Yeah, go
Ryan,
ahead.
can I comment on what you just said? I think that's such a huge point that I think we have to put a pin in it. We can't let that one slide because I remember in my second year as a teacher, I'd convinced my social studies department to buy this like fancy box of imitation primary sources, right, on westward expansion. I'm like, this is so cool. It's got like a replica newspaper from the period. It's got these wanted postings. It was really great. And my coach, who shout out Doris Dempsey, who I don't believe is on social media, but Doris looked at it, she smiled, and she's like, that's cool. What's it for? And I'm like, what do you mean, what's it for? It's cool. Look, it's like a pretend newspaper. And I think to your point, Ryan, it's easy to like, and my, and when my number comes up, I'll talk about how, smoothly I think my teaching style actually did transition into the pandemic. Like,
go for it. You're on the mic. If you're on the mic, stay on the mic.
Okay. All right. No, but just like Ryan, to your point, I think it's important to sort of understand the situation that our students are facing in front of us before we start rolling out these fancy strategies and these tools that aren't rooted in a relationship. And, I just really appreciate that point because there are cool resources out there that are super useful and, engaging, and they'll help students succeed. But there are some things that you can get really overwhelmed by all of these like toys that are out here. If they don't have a purpose in your work. So for me, I mean, it was just really interesting because, you see social media and you see folks, kind of posting and tweeting about how this year I'm just going to care about the kids and I'm just going to be flexible and I'm going to allow their voice into things. And I'm like, y'all weren't doing that before? Like you didn't care about children before there was a pandemic? And I say that half jokingly, like I think it's sort of interesting where people are like, your students you have to make sure they're okay beyond anything else. I'm like, I've been doing that for 22 years. Like, so now we're going to say caring about human beings is a radical, innovative idea. And so that's why I think, now there are things that did not work. I have a discussion-based class and so it was really difficult to get students to engage in the way that I was used to having them engage. But, finding different ways to connect to them both on the daily and just in the big picture was really, really important. And like I had one class that would participate for every second, every minute of the period in the chat. So they wouldn't say a word. You didn't see any of their faces, but the chat was amazing. And I would tell them, I was like, man, y'all win the chat daily. Like you're killing it on the chat. And then there were other students who would talk over each. My 7th graders loved to talk over video. Like they loved it. They would talk over each other. They would laugh. They would make jokes. My high schoolers weren't so much into it. And so I think that flexibility was really important. And then I think from a content delivery perspective, like I think as a history teacher who also taught AP, this was a very important moment for the students to think about, right? I always teach that history is a matter of the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times, and how people were feeling and how people were making sense of the period they were in. And I had this aha moment, in in a professional development that my district held with Dr. LeGarrette King from the University of Missouri. Shout out Dr. LeGarrette King. This dude is dope. If you don't follow him, you need to follow him. His focus is Black historical consciousness. And Dr. King said, the thing is, in order for young people to not hate history, we have to let them know a couple of things. First of all, this is human beings. Second of all, history is contentious. It's contentious. Different folks will choose to view history in different ways. And the third thing is that there's stuff that's just unresolved. And so for the first month of the pandemic, I was like, I have to be able to explain this. It's all going to be okay, y'all. I didn't know that for a fact. Governments and NGOs are going to do a great job of rallying the people, and the people are going to fall in line. Like, we know this will happen. And we just know that none of that happens. And so I think history became more authentic, because then I could say, y'all, think about the Black Death. They're not sitting there saying, yeah, this is really bad, but in about 60 years, it's going to be fine. So don't even worry. Like, this was imminent doom for everybody. Right. And so what I emphasize to my students is that uncertainty, that anxiety, that fear, that depression, that everything that's affecting you about this moment, this is real. And this is what people were feeling like for real in difficult times that they were living in. And so it really was an opportunity for me to try to stay present and to just know that some stuff is unresolved, So I felt like, and then the other thing is kind of getting over myself, like, the type of engagement that I needed from students oftentimes was it so I could feel like a good teacher. When they're talking and raising their hands and answering, even if it's the same 3 kids every single freaking time, like, it makes me feel better as a teacher. Okay, so this thing that I want the students to do and to participate in, is it for them or is it for me? And I think that was always my big question.
And I saw a lot of teachers struggling with that over the last year, especially with those really, really quiet classes, because your anxiety fills in all that silence. It's like the first half of Jaws, when like you don't see the monster and you're just freaking out the whole time. So yeah, when you just get like stunned silence from the kids after asking like every single question, it's really easy for all of that to turn into anger, or it's also possible to just channel all of that into trying to like understand where they're coming from.
To be fair, like that is tough. And Gerardo, I do a discussion-based class too, and it took a while to figure that out. But I straight up, like, we're all people who run podcasts. I would tease the kids, like, from the first week of school. I'm like, look, guys, like, you can all jump in and we can do this thing together, or I can talk at you the entire time. Like, I can sit here with a blank screen. We can just do this, but that's not good for any of us. So that was essentially like the dare was like, if you guys don't chime in, I'm going to hit you with a 90-minute lecture, and that's just how this is going to go. And it became a running joke where the kids would like jump in, and they would sometimes they would interrupt at the worst possible times, and I would just play along with it, because as long as you're engaged, like, we're good. Anytime someone's like, my job isn't to sit here and talk to these kids for that long. And I'm like, I love that you think that. And I hope you keep thinking that when you return to school, because if I see you in your classroom talking at them for too long, then you were lying to me. Like, this is crazy, Yeah, I'm like, guys, you got a podcaster here as your teacher. Like, I will talk at you. Please don't make me.
I would also say, though, that it's important to interrogate the term engagement, right? Like, what does engagement mean? Does engagement mean the students are engaging with what I'm telling them to engage with, or are we engaging authentically through a process? One of the big things that I discovered over the past year was the work of Annie Fetter. And math folks, you might know about Annie Fetter, but she's the one that teaches math from a what do you notice? What do you wonder?
Okay, yeah.
And her YouTube videos are incredible. Like, you see what she's doing with math. So I started to do that around social studies. And what I was realizing is that the thing I thought the students were going to get or should get out of the material was actually not the same thing that they would actually get out of it, and made for a much richer conversation. So yeah, I mean, I did a lot of what Ryan said, was saying is like, okay, I mean, it can be my voice or it can be our voices. But then I also thought it was important to say, this doesn't feel important enough for us to talk about. So tell me where you're at right now, and how do I make sure that that you care, that what we're doing here is important to you, and if it's not, what do we do about that? And so I think I've always co-created like the experience in my classroom with my students But I think I really needed to trust that process. Sorry, Philadelphia 76ers fans on the call. I really had to trust that process because they had no reason. I could not coerce or force them to do anything they didn't want to do, and they could just say, oh, my mic and camera aren't working. Sorry. And there's nothing I could do about it. So I had to trust that, I had to trust them with what I was teaching them and what we were learning together. So it was just a really interesting experience in that way, like saying, oh, no, we're actually equal partners in this now because you all can just collectively decide to unplug and make this whole thing a mockery if I don't approach it right.
Yeah.
I think something that's important in the conversation that's happening is silence can be a reflection of something else. Maybe they're silent because they don't know what we're asking them. Mm-hmm. They have to process through that. We have to give them that time. And I teach languages, so I have to give them even more time to process what did she just ask me, right? Even if I teach a literature class, they're coming in, I'm asking them a question, they have to process, okay, what was that? They have to put that into the book, they have to bring it back and tell it to me. But so is the question too elevated? Am I speaking past their knowledge? And in any topic, that can be a thing. And then if we give them the answer because we're not giving them time to think, why are they going to even try? So then you're going to get that cricket because they know I give it 10 seconds and they'll give me the answer.
Excellent. Yeah, being patient, that's something you always learn as like a first year teacher is like to be comfortable in the silence. But it was definitely much tougher this year when the silence seemed to do that. But definitely I can see that there is a time to process and just kind of.
So unfortunately, that's innovative in my world. But the thing that I've done is preparing students. And so with languages, we all tend to assume they've been in school for 12 years. They know how to learn, and languages is different a little bit. So with a friend of mine, we have worked on that to tell them, here is your expectation, and here is where you need to be. One semester, no, you're not going to talk with President Macron on the problem of COVID and where the France is economically on the world platform. That is not going to happen. What you'll be able to do is with broken French, maybe make a hotel reservation, find some food in a restaurant that is not too disgusting to you, and find the Eiffel Tower if you go to Paris. That's where you're going to be at. And
well, first step is just, where's the bathroom? Just learn that sentence and we can build up from there. Yeah.
Right. So you're finding those directions, right? Bathroom, then the Eiffel Tower.
That's all of Paris.
Yes.
That's it.
Can I jump in quick? I have a joke that I use all the time on this. I've traveled a little bit and I'm miserable at languages. And I tell kids this when they're like, oh, I'm traveling this summer. I'm like, you need to know how to say like basically two things, right? You need to know how to order two of whatever. I need to order 2 beers. I need to order 2 ice cream cones. And then I need to be able to say, do you speak English? I buy 2 of whatever I have and I walk around and I just keep saying, do you speak English? Until someone smiles and says yes. And I hand them the second one and then they translate for me for the next 30, 40 minutes. And it works everywhere I've ever gone. I buy 2 beers or I buy 2 ice cream cones. And I walk around going, do you speak English? Do you speak English? And they say yes. And I hand them one. And now I have a friend and we're good. Sorry, that's how I get through foreign language situations.
That's innovation that works, boys and girls. Okay, that is innovation that works.
Fantastic.
Okay,
that's my job. Awesome. I will present them with that plan.
Definitely.
Any
cool.
of you ever tried to do escape rooms in your classrooms? Because they can do with any topic, any subject.
I haven't.
Yes,
I did it over
I
the
wrote
last
some really
year.
bad ones.
I found some virtual ones. But I should say this though. I had a friend who got on Teachers Pay Teachers and bought an escape room for us that was through like what's it, the Google Forms, right? It's 7th grade. I had a 7th grader in my class who was able to like open the source code and scroll down and find the answers and solve it in 30 seconds. I'm like, I'm not even mad. Just don't tell the other kids. Like,
I found that on TikTok. I saw how to do that on TikTok.
I'm so impressed.
Yeah, if you're not on TikTok, you're missing out on a lot of things.
I'm missing out on most of those things, though.
Yeah, that's true.
If you want to know about your students, have them do an escape room and you will know exactly what you need, because you have those. I do them a lot in mine, and students, even colleagues will go, well, if I had more instructions, it would have been a lot easier. And it's like, well, yeah, I could also give you a recipe. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Then what's the point of you doing that?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I feel like my whole class is an escape room. I just like they desperately want out, and I tell them, well, you're going to have to pass and build these skills. So you'll make it out in June if all goes well.
All right. Toria, you ready to hit us with something?
Yeah.
She's unmuted. There we go. Go ahead.
I'm unmuted. No, I've been loving the conversation, actually. I'm just writing. I write lots of notes when I'm doing my podcast as well. I just write lots of notes whenever people are talking. So I've just written pages and pages while you've all been talking. It's been fascinating.
Awesome.
I don't think I'm an innovator necessarily. I think, Tudisco said it, I don't necessarily consider myself an innovator, but I teach little people compared to you lot, I think. So my lot are year 4 England, and I have no clue what grade that is, but they come into me at 8 years of age. Mm-hmm. So they're quite young. And over here during during the pandemic, we've had, I think it's 3 lockdowns. I lose track now. But the children have been away from their friends, away from their colleagues. They've been locked down in houses, basically, with everything shut down for months on end. And then they've returned to school. And what I've noticed, which has been really interesting, is that they have been desocialized. So they've moved out of that ability to just socialize normally with one another, to go out into the playground and play, because they've been so used to being on their own, sitting on a computer doing virtual learning, and sitting on their own computer just playing games. So actually something that I've really had to do in my classroom is sort of redefine the power of talk. Now, my classroom is one in which dialogue and talk has always been really important. But in a sense, I've had to reteach children how to communicate with one another. And actually, my classroom now is, it's full of talk all the time. But one of my children said the other day about how much more confident she is now. And I don't know, I'm sure that many educators across the globe have had to reconsider talk in the classrooms with children returning, because actually it is something that has just been impacted really, really considerably. I don't know your thoughts on that, if that's the same for your age groups, if you've had to sort of do the same sort of thing, or if it's just more for the little people.
I'm going to find out in the fall, I think, because we the most I had in my class was like 5 people. So,
yeah.
Toria,
I can tell you a little bit, and thanks for that insight. I think that there is a lot of implication for how we address just dialogue in the classroom. And what my thinking is that there are underlying things that prevented kids from verbalizing things on Google Meets or Zoom or wherever you're kind of doing your remote teaching.
Well, I think as well, just to say, there are a lot of schools over here that weren't teaching in that way. So in my school, for example, due to safeguarding measures, we weren't doing it with the children on the other side of the camera. We were sending over videos that we had recorded, which the children were then watching.
Yeah.
And we were online. So I was on my Google Classroom the whole time to see the children giving their work in and being able to respond and support.
Right.
But at no point was I on the other side of a camera.
Gotcha.
To them.
Yeah. So that's good. That is going to be really interesting. When I think of my own context, it's going to be more about what are the things that are preventing students from verbalizing their ideas, and particularly in middle school. I would even say more so in high school. There's a lot of self-consciousness. Am I gonna misspeak? I'm gonna say something wrong. I hate the sound of my voice. I don't want to hear it, and I definitely don't want others to hear it. Somebody's gonna call me out. Somebody's gonna make fun of me. Somebody's gonna.
Anybody looks at me, I'm going to die.
No, I mean, that's it. But also, we also know that like there was an issue at another school here where kids were screenshotting like their classmates and making really mean like memes and posts about them. Yeah. And so like there are some very valid reasons. And so at our level, we'll have to address it address like understanding again what the social emotional reasons are that we're not hearing that we weren't hearing their voices, and that they're not just going to flip a switch when they come back. And Tori, I can't even imagine at that point. It's like you would almost just need to it's like sentence stems, right? It's like, okay, so
it was.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it was. You go back right to the beginning, and it was really funny. Just, the very first conversation, because I always put out these stupid questions for my children, like, what are the similarities and differences between Superman and Spider-Man? Or what are the similarities and differences between paper and chocolate? And up to that point, up to the point of lockdown, my children could have conversations with each other. They returned, and they'd lost that ability to face the person they were having a conversation with, give eye contact, recognize that they needed to move their body. It was really, really interesting.
Yeah. I would even offer
how
that
far
I
back
think
they've gone.
The nature of dialogue, I think, will have changed. That even coming back to what I once envisioned as an academic conversation, I think that's all going to change, because it's 15 months of trauma where we've been impacted. And so I almost think that even what we saw as dialogue in the classroom, no matter what level we were teaching, it won't be the same this coming fall, whenever we're back fully in person.
Yeah.
And just quick with that, because I teach public speaking. And so we had to do public speaking online, which is wild, and it's 9 through 12. So I have freshmen through seniors through whatever, and trying to figure out like the dynamics of like talking about, reading the feedback from the room, when everybody has their cameras off and this kind of stuff. And so, I build generally pretty good relationships with these kids. And so we've been talking about it, and the screenshot and meme making of classmates was actually one of the biggest deterrents to kids having their cameras on. They're like, look, people are taking pictures of other people in class and doing whatever. And so we hit the point where I was like, look, you don't ever have to have your camera on here. I appreciate if you do, but if you're going to be speaking, like giving a speech, like not like, I have a question that takes 15 seconds. Like if you're going to be speaking, your camera has to go on. And we're always going to have at least 3 or 4 people who are going to have their cameras on too. And it literally came to me like saying 50% jokingly that if I ever caught somebody screenshotting someone else from class, that I would show up at your front door and we'd have to talk about it in person. And like, and everybody's like, it's kind of funny, except for like the 4 kids who might've done it. And it seemed mildly threatening, but it was just enough that we could cool that behavior out. Mm-hmm. It's a dumb thing to have to say at all, but that was really it.
Yeah.
But that's also a place where I think the way we respond to these things is going to be very different, say for a high school student versus elementary, especially early elementary. And it's something that I'm concerned about as we say, hopefully fully return to school in person and all this stuff next year, is that at say a county or a district level, there's the tendency to say, this is what we're going to do. And we don't always get sort of effective differentiation at the policy level between what we need to do for a second grader versus what we need to do for a 12th grader. And so what is an appropriate way to run your class, or what your expectations are for kids' behavior in a discussion, they should be different. But that also means that if you want to empower teachers, you need to help them understand either what's going to be different or give them the freedom to make choices in how that's going to run in their classroom. Because what you need to do in second grade is not going to be necessarily the same solution in 11th. And I get worried because when I hear, superintendents or school boards sort of addressing this, they start making these big blanket statements about what we're going to do. But the kid who's 16 had a lot of experience in school ahead of time. Like they're going to bounce back probably a little bit easier than the kid who's in first or second grade and doesn't have that background.
Yeah. And
for someone in an administrative position to pretend like we can just slap a Band-Aid on this and there's one thing that'll work is both, I think, counterproductive but alarming. And that's a lot of the talk I've heard as we start thinking about coming back in. So like those soft skills and that discussion piece is going to be a really big deal, I think, coming up this fall.
Yep. I'm just going to touch on that for just a second. The challenging thing is, even though for those kids that are 16 and 17, like my son, he's going to be an 11th grader next year. Well, we kept him home, we opted for the full remote thing. He has going to be walking into his junior year, having not been in a classroom since he was like barely a freshman, like halfway through his freshman year. So it's going to be like,
my kid says she still feels like she's in 9th grade.
Yeah, it's going to be an adjustment, and just all those dynamics of how to be with your friends, or whether it's someone that you're, the whole dating, just drama and headache and nightmare that can be going through, high school is now like magnified because you are like, so much more immature than, and it's going to be a lot of weirdness and awkwardness and anxiety. It's going to be a lot. We're going to have to hold their hands a lot next year, I'm sure. And we need to be ready for that. So Mike, you go, and then Batsheva. So give us something innovative, sir.
Hey man, I love that. I love that you talked about holding their hands. As we were having this conversation, I was just thinking like, there always seems to be this push from adults for kids to conform to what adults want them to be. And I think what the discomfort that I'm seeing from a lot of educators is that now, because kids are in their living room, and because there has been this like sizable gap between the time that they've been with teachers, you're seeing some students actually just straight up exercise autonomy that they have not felt the freedom to do. And so they're not in the practice of submitting to authority in the same way. And that I actually really like. I think it's awesome. And so I'm a
teachers.
Yeah.
No,
like
period. That's the other thing, man. I have something to say about that, but go ahead. I'm so with that.
Yeah, I'm just like I'm the provocateur in the room. Like I broke all the rules, even some of the ones that I created when I was a teacher. I was like flooding out hallways. And it was because I remember being a student who I just couldn't get it right behavior wise, right. And then I had this moment of realization when I was in high school that there is no right for me. It's what's right for my classmates is not the same for me. And I had, for the first time, teachers that were like, "Yeah, you can say that. You can do that." And it was the first time that I felt at home in school. And so I don't know. But the innovation that works for me, and I'll talk about remote learning too. So I am outside of the classroom now. And that view from outside of the classroom has been really nice. And it's been really helpful. I still get to work with students. We run a youth fellowship, and I run all these wacky projects that I pull students into because they're to improve education. To try to fix education without students is futile. It's just stupid and doesn't make sense. So I love still getting to work with students. But before I left the classroom, we built what I believe to be an extremely successful remote learning program. And there was, I mean, a lot of teachers can't do anything about this because the districts are mandating this, but like we didn't have our school didn't have lecture to begin with. And because of that, when we transitioned to virtual, it was much easier. We also, I'm going to tell everybody that we were really smart, but we weren't. We just did this because we thought it was cool. We started building a virtual learning program in September of 2019. It was like, we didn't know the pandemic was coming. We were just like, wouldn't it be dope if somebody got sick?
Oh no, man, you might have manifested it, bro. You might have manifested it.
I've read the secret.
Yes.
I'm going to tell my kids.
Right. Well, the reason why we didn't say anything is because we were like, we don't want to be those people that are like, hey, we have this figured out. But we also don't want to be the people where the conspiracy theorists are like, well, since y'all over here messing with stuff.
So we literally played the game Pandemic 3 weeks before the shutdown. So I feel like
wow. Great board game.
I feel like it falls on Two Dope Nation's shoulders. I keep interrupting you, Mike. I apologize.
It's all good. I'm gonna tell now. That's a good interruption because I'm gonna tell people it was you. So the cool thing about the program that we ran was that like we already had all these pieces in place where students didn't have to be in front of a teacher to engage and to sort of we had systems built that were built by students that just worked for them. And I'm talking K through 12. So like it was extremely successful, but we had like a Jeopardy board that was built on Airtable of all of these different challenges, projects, and things like that. Like I built our public speaking vertical. We had a public speaking app that gave them automatic feedback. It's called Ori. If you have not used it, Ryan, you should use it. I'll connect you with the founder. Ori's dope.
Hold on, so far your apps are Ori and
Yep. Yep. I have
he's from Onomatopoeia University. It sounds like
he knows that if you accidentally turn on voice command, like on your phone, they'll automatically download, and that's like that's good for
right.
See, I'm opening my third eye, Mike. I'm opening my third eye. I see you. I see what you're doing.
Yeah. No, but I mean, in the types of schools that I build and that I work at, we use about 200 different apps, and because it's app-based learning, that was already their digital medium. It was already their like native home. So when we hit the button for remote learning, we actually had a lot of students that were like, I don't want to go back to being in person because I prefer this. Like, I'm much more productive this way. So it's really interesting. But the thing that I really learned that I think is that I've been doing for my whole education career that I will talk about that's most innovative is the thing that sounds most simple, and it's actually like fighting to make learning real. And I mean the most real. I got tired of, as a teacher, saying, imagine this. And at that point, I was like, nah. Like, we had to do map skills, and I was like, I got permission to drive my students to downtown Fort Worth and leave them in a location and have them navigate to me, just because it was ridiculous and it got them out of their comfort zone. And I was like, you will never actually in your life have to use like ordinal and cardinal directions without a GPS in your phone. However, they say we have to cover this, and this is how we're going to do it. and then we went back to the same spot, and I was like, now you get one iPhone. So I literally handed them my phone. It was like, it's going to be so much easier to find things, right? And do I think that was the most valuable and meaningful lesson for them? I don't. But the thing that I think that they took away from it is valuable is that this dude cares enough to connect the dots between what they say we're supposed to learn and what reality is. And it got me buy-in, right? Like they would do anything for me, you know? And so when we studied food around the world, we ended up building a service project where we engaged Whole Foods and got them to give free salad bars to the school for lunch because they hated their lunch food, right? And so you have these sixth graders that are like fighting for salad bars. Like, we're showing up at the superintendent's office and they're like, we should just kick in the door. But I fought to make learning real and take it physically outside of the classroom. And I think that as we come back from the pandemic, I think that those types of things will be really special. And there are brands and organizations out there that are literally waiting for the education community to engage with them. On Twitter, maybe almost a year, like 9 months ago, I reached out to a sneaker company called 99 Products. This team, the founder of this brand, worked at Nike for 20 years. I'd say like 65 to 70% of sneakers that people wear, Nike, Cole Haan, Everlane, like all these different brands like he's worked on, the Yeezy brand, which is the most hyped sneaker ever. And now he started his own thing. So we reached out and we were like, yo, let's cross education and sneakers. And we had schools that used it as a design experience, right? Like a school like the Life, I actually have a giant box of sneakers next to me. Like, they designed a sneaker that tells a story about the future of learning. And so it was an engagement in marketing, design, communication. Then they had to pitch their sneaker, and so you had like this is from a new school coming up in Fort Worth called Freedom School. This school you can write on it with dry erase markers and customize your sneaker, because they said, the students said, learning should be personalized, right? I mean, we talked about
cool,
like racial equity. They talked about shades of Black and brown women. They designed this logo that went on there. So the learning for them was real, and it didn't take a lot to get them to show up on Zoom. And the one thing that I noticed is that their cameras were always on, because this was something different, and it was new, and it was something that they knew, I cannot get this experience anywhere else, right? And so I feel like if we fight for that as the education community when we come back, and I know, like, I've been in the classroom, I know it feels in a lot of places nearly impossible, because the thing that I work on and the thing that I'm fighting for is that at the teacher preparation level, at the superintendent level, at the district level, what they think students need, y'all already know it's not accurate. And what they think teachers need, we already know is just completely not. There's such a mismatch. And we're at the Reinvention Lab, we're trying to in part be that bridge. And we're trying to say, hey, Teach for America, like, yes, we're part of the same organization, but like we are screwing up, not have screwed up. We are currently screwing up in the way that we're preparing teachers to go into the classroom, right? So my encouragement is just to make it as real as possible, like at an uncomfortable level for you and parents and for the rest of the building. And I guess the other thing would be like have an aha factor. Like I always, every year I strive to have like an aha factor to where the rest of the school would be like, dang, that dude's dope. I want to be in his class, right? Like, so that's what I got.
Cool.
Mike, how'd you get such engagement out of your students? I left them on a street corner and drove away.
Yes.
Yep.
And see, it's wild how the beauty of that is, and this is what we want to do as teachers, is toggle between making them feel really comfortable and then making them feel really uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like they need to feel comfortable so that when we feel uncomfortable, they'll do what it takes to get the learning, from that uncomfortable feeling. Because it's weird. Like, and then you made them uncomfortable putting them downtown, but then that made them comfortable the rest of the year. It's weird how sometimes those things that I don't know, paradox or dichotomy, whatever words you want to use, kind of do that. So it's interesting. That's really cool.
I'll tell you that the greatest school leader that I've ever known is this guy that would prefer to be in the mountains by himself. He literally has a cabin in a place called Last Chance, Idaho, like where there's no, like, he only has Wi-Fi for work. He always used to say to me, the best schools are a place that makes students feel uncomfortable in a place where they feel safe.
Yeah.
So it's like, you just basically said the same thing. So
yeah,
that's cool.
Cool. All right. So Batsheva, hit us.
Wow, those are hard acts to follow. Those are amazing. Everybody said such incredible things. So that was really impressive. I wanted to look at something. There were so many, I was thinking, like, should I talk about this? Should I talk about that? There's so many cool things that I would really want to talk about. But there was this one thing that I feel like not enough schools do. So this is kind of a school-wide thing. And it's something that that started with a school, the last school that I worked with, Arte Preparatory Academy, who is also the sponsor of my podcast. I taught English there for many years. And we sort of came up with this thing. I called it passion-based teaching, right? We all know, like, there's the million PBLs of all the learning. This is passion-based teaching. And so one of the many subjects that I teach is English, and I've taught it for many, many years. But usually when I teach, like, especially high school English, all you high school teachers know out there, there's like, 1 year is American Lit and 1 year is World Lit, and and there's sort of these quote unquote canon that you're supposed to teach. But what we did actually is that every English teacher taught things that they themselves were super passionate and interested in. And you would find the students who you think would connect with that theme.
Passion. Yeah.
That passion, that theme. So, for example, and we would sort of curate our classes, and the students could switch, by the way, if they felt like that it wasn't a class that they were super interested in. And sometimes there were places where there were choices. They could choose from this one or whatever. So one of my favorites that I talk about is I had noticed that a lot of the girls were very, like, in other classes, I'd see them in other classes, and they were shy to speak out. And they didn't want to, they were sort of no offense, guys, but they were a little bit overrun by the guys. And I wanted them to feel more empowered. So I asked my head of school if I could put together a class that was just girls. And this isn't it's not an all-girl school, it's a mixed school. So I said, I want all girls, and I wanted to call it Defying Societal Gravity, Strong Women in Literature.
Wow.
And he said yes. And so I put this class together. It was amazing. And we did all kinds of strong women in literature from all over the world and different time periods. It was mostly, to be honest, like 19th and 20th century. But it was so amazing. And the girls loved it. Actually, they loved it so much they asked if we could stay together for the following year, which we did. And we did, we actually, some of us, the other thing that's really innovative is that we don't do grades by grades. So, and I think schools should look at this. You look at skills levels, interest levels, and you put together. So I would have classes sometimes, like I had class once that was 3 seniors and a bunch of freshmen. And the freshmen were the ones who were so advanced that they were with the seniors. Mm-hmm. And, I would have like these mixed classes. So some of the girls stayed with me we did 3 years and 3 different topics, but they were all about empowering. So like the second year we did, it was called like something, I think it was like Team Dreamers, and it was all about empowering them as teenagers. And then the third year.
So the Twilight series, basically.
Right. It was, right. And then it was artist. The third year was artist as palette. So that was, and it was how to tell our own stories. I wanted to empower my students to feel confident to be able to tell their own stories. But I've also done a lot of other things, like I did one called Word versus Image, where we took an iconic piece of literature that had an iconic film of the same name, but might be totally different, like Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so we'd study the piece of literature and we'd study the film, and even things like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where the film is so very different from the piece of literature. So we do like a lot of stuff like that. And then I had one class called Magic, Mayhem, and Miracles. So it's just things that like, I would be like, I'm really interested in this, and I love this. I love these books, or I really want, or my students need this, I feel like students could really use this. And sometimes what we do is I'll plan like a few of the parts, but I'll say like, this is our theme. What are some things that you want to learn? What are things you're interested in? And I help them co-create the curriculum, which I think is, really fantastic, because then we can really explore things that they're interested in. And it's not just about me telling them, like somebody said before, it's not me telling them what they should be interested in. It's them saying, this is what I'm interested in. Can we study that? So that was kind of one of the things that I thought. The other thing I would just mention really quickly is, since I also teach history sometimes, is I developed a game called Battle of the Big Ideas for history. Ooh. And it's just a way of this really cool, very in-depth way of looking at the bigger ideas in history and really following them through these big themes and isms and so forth, that you can kind of follow through pieces, parts of history, and it gamifies it, and it's really cool. So that's the other innovation. If anybody wants to know more about that, I'm so happy to share it. That's it.
I know you do a lot with gamification, and I want to do more with gamification in my classroom.
I'm going to say there's a little bit of gamification is a tricky term. So I'm going to call it game-based learning. I do more game-based learning, because a lot of times people think gamification is things. I talked about this with Lindsay Portnoy, who is an expert on this too. And gamification is sort of like, we're going to level you up, or you're going to get badges, or you're going to get this prize if you do this thing or whatever. But game-based learning is really like using game engines, and it can have a competitiveness to it. It can have there's all kinds of things that it's more like game-based learning, I think, is what I do. And I would love to help you, Jessica. Anything you want, I'm there.
Awesome. So first of all, this has been absolutely fantastic, and we got a little bit of time before we start playing the game you've all been dying to play. So, but what I want to kind of do now is, and however many we get to, and however it goes. But if someone said something that was of interest to you, and you go, hey, I'd like to know more about that, or can you give me this detail about that, or how did you do that, or what did you think about this, or something like that. So if go for it, Ryan. What you got?
All right, so it's a question, because I was thinking there's like a not with all these comments, but there's a common thread between a lot of them, right? And that what we're talking about is doing things that are essentially more like real life and less like school, if we're allowed to make a distinction between real life and school, which right. I hate that we can do that, but that, that I think everybody at least knows what I mean, right?
Yes.
In some of the early episodes of my podcast, I talked with people, and even last summer, I had some conversations about like unschooling, this sort of idea where people just sort of pull their kids out of school, and then you're just like, you're in the community, you read some books, we go to some museums, we do whatever. And, and I have concerns about it. I don't think it's for everyone. And I don't think, I think there's a certain degree of privilege that says you have a parent who can stay home and help the kid, and you have a community that has the resources that can facilitate all this. But if you think about like the sneaker idea, some of the GPS stuff, some of the creating a game, the Batsheva talking about like having the same group of kids for multiple years in a row, because you're at a private school where you can ask and you can get some flexible scheduling, and the kids can be a part of this. Like, a lot of the ideas that we just heard were really about ways to take things like it's in school and then to make it seem as little like school as possible. And so so it's a question to whoever wants to play with it, but like, if we think carefully about a lot of the innovative ideas we've heard today, and maybe we've been hearing a lot of over the last year or two, if the best ideas we have about how to make school better are to make school less like school, then why don't we just go big and say, let's do like tear it down and do the whole thing over? Like there's a lot of arguments for incremental change. And I do this myself. We have real estate, we have funding, we have public support. Like, you don't want to throw those things away. You don't want to alienate a public that generally supports a public school system. That being said, if you listen to the coolest ideas about what kids really learn from, they're completely foreign to what a regular sort of normal school experience is. Where do we go from here? Like, what are we supposed to do with all these cool ideas? Like, I feel like we're paddling upstream in a way we almost don't.
This is literally my life's work. When you talk about ripping the school system apart from the threads, my podcast used to be called School Sucks, but I changed it not because I believe that less, but because there was already a School Sucks podcast that was on break when I started, and then they came back, and I was like, I don't want to get into any podcast beef, so I changed my podcast to Schoolish. But I changed it to Schoolish because, I think you're onto something, Ryan, and that like where I envision school is actually that there are so many options. And some of the best ones make people go, is that really a school? At the school we built in Austin, it's called Alpha. It was built in an old concert venue called LZR or La Zona Rosa. And we would literally have parents come visit, and they would go, you don't know what I've done in this building. I cannot send my child here. We had a parent, no joke, that was like, I think my kid was conceived in this room. Right?
Wow.
So just like, there's still a bar in the building.
To be completely fair, I think there've been at least a couple of kids conceived in some of the schools I've worked in. So just to be fair, let's be honest.
That. You're right. There have been kids conceived. Any school that's more than 20 years old, there's been someone conceived in that school.
Right. Some people don't need a good place, but I say that to say, like, I really do think we should rethink every tiny aspect about education, even the word school. Right. When we built the school in Austin, we called it Alpha and not Alpha Academy or Alpha School for a reason, because we wanted, when students showed up or when they talked about it with their friends, we wanted them to think like, this is something other than what you know to be a school. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is I think a lot of people, when you start talking about innovation, the public school system has done a really good job of training the general public to believe that the system is needed as is. And I actually I deeply believe in public school. I believe in free education. Public school changed my life. I went to public school from K to 12. I didn't have an option. My mom was a single mother, and she was a single mother on a teacher's salary. And so, raising 3 crazy boys. So the public school system literally saved my life. And I am committed to literally pulling it apart at the seams and stitching it back together with all these pieces that we find. And I think we have to look outside of education. We have to look at insurance companies. You want to talk about gamification? The best place to learn about gamification right now is an app called Root. It's an insurance app that gamifies almost the way you drive. They don't do as great a job about it. There's a better one called Loop that is coming. Shout out to Loop. Y'all should go check out ridewithloop.com. They're coming. Yeah.
And we just need to change it to OOP. We just want to make it OOP because just stick with the theme. Get rid of that now. Just OOP.
Right. Okay. I think that's also another. But Loop's gamification is going to be dope because I'm going to be working with it. But anyway, I think you're right, Ryan, that we do have to pull the system apart. But the one thing I'll say is that some of these options are not necessarily only reserved for those with privilege or not necessarily as expensive as many people think. And there are also just some sacrifices. Like my wife and I are very transparent about this. We homeschool and we do as close to what unschooling is. Like we're using apps for everything, and everything is taught through, asking questions, discussion, designing projects, all of that. And apps, mainly, it's not necessarily because we think that's the best. We do think it's the best, but it's also because like neither one of us wants to do the teaching. I'm like, look, I do this all day. I'm not trying to go downstairs and talk to y'all about. My wife is like, I'm not trying to. But I will say, like, we're very open about this. We were on welfare at one point because that was the choice we made, right? Like I changed the trajectory of my career as a sacrifice so that I could school that way. And I know that not everybody's willing to do that. And I know that we're blessed in ways that even allow that to be possible for us. But as long as there is breath in my lungs, I will be trying to build those solutions, those hybrid solutions, those school solutions, so that there is a neighborhood place. Like we're working with, we're trying to work in Washington, D.C., Ward 6, 7, and 8, trying to build a McDonald's-sized virtual learning hub every square mile of that 33 square mile radius, so that you can walk and plug into a community of learners anywhere you go, simply because the charter schools, they just ain't cutting it over there, right? So I think there's a lot of wacky solutions. My call to action is not actually with any of us. It is to these. I was ranting about this the other day, and this is the last thing I'm going to say. I keep seeing these big entrepreneurs and businessmen say things like, the K through 12 system sucks. And I'm like, yeah, you're so correct. Really appreciate it. Now, where's the check? Gary Vaynerchuk, like Gary V, Mark Cuban, you keep saying
that's real. That's real.
Yeah, right.
That's
like
real.
Where's the money? You know, because they haven't.
Yep. Yeah. And I want to throw something out, like, and I think, Ryan, thank you so much for that point. I think one of the things that doesn't get called out enough when we start talking about an abolition, because what we were all talking about is an abolitionist perspective on education. And there's a whole lot of folks who are way smarter than me who are doing this work. So if you haven't read Dr. Bettina L. Love, if you haven't followed and supported the Abolitionist Teaching Network, if you haven't looked at the work of Quetzal Education, like there are Black and brown women led organizations who are having these conversations, right? And who have these kinds of visions. And so what we're really talking about, and I just pulled up a tweet from my friend Marilyn Zuniga. She says, a school is a school is a school. All my years working in different school contexts, I've realized the truth. A school with a social justice vision and mission is still a school. U.S. schooling is a colonial project, and it must be abolished. So what we're talking about when we talk about U.S. American education is we're talking about white supremacist settler colonialism. That is what this is an outgrowth of. That is why it was developed. And so when we start talking about abolishing this, then we're actually talking about something real, right? And you know, I have a secondary podcast kind of project that I'm working on called Habitually Disruptive, and the idea is that you can't. It's very difficult to just burn things down, right? The public education system has been with us in this form for over a century. It's very resistant to our anger and our feelings, right? Yeah. So what you have to do is find the little places to disrupt. And I would also point people to the work at the Escuela Verde. My friend Zainab used to be on the leadership group there. And Escuela Verde is there in Milwaukee. This school is everything that y'all talk about. So Mike, when you're talking about the partnerships with the community and businesses, when we talk about doing something real, when we talk about something that is a direct challenge to the white supremacist industrial capitalist like reason for education, I mean, that school is really doing it. But yeah, I'm with it. And so it's like looking for the disruptions, and you know, and that might have a cost to it. And Mike, I'm glad you pointed that out. And Ryan, thank you for posing that question, because I do think that in my work, and I'm not successful at it every day, in my work, I'm looking for ways that my actions can eventually lead to the collapse of the education system as we know it.
Yeah. I was going to say the thing that Ryan, that it hit me, and it's not the first time it's hit me, but schools, they are very, very similar to prisons, and they're very, very similar to the military. It's just so institutional even when it comes to the way that they're built, when it comes to the food that they serve. I
mean, school is prison, right? That's a different conversation.
I know, but there's so many similarities that there really are, you know, very, very, very similar. And so that's what I was going to see. And I don't know how, and no one, I don't know. It's tough. Like Gerardo said, I think that it's good to do it from both ends, where what we can do from the inside and change things in our individual classrooms or in our individual district or in our individual department, whatever your ability to affect change is. It might be just inside your classroom. You might be able to affect your whole school. You might be able to affect your whole district, but we can do that simultaneously while other people are, working from the outside in. And I think that it takes both of those things doing that, so that when it gets torn apart, we'll be there to, if we're not the terror aparters, we'll be there to stitch it back together. You know what I mean? And we'll be prepared to go, hey, guess what? This is how you wanted it. Well, I've already been doing that for like 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. So thank you for like tearing down this wall. So now I can do what I was doing out in the open.
My greatest educator was hip hop. And so the thing that I think about is, am I an industry artist or am I an artist in the industry? And so that's the, and I'm both on different days, like, depending on what it is, because again, disruption is not something that is easy. It's not something that we do perfectly all the time. Sometimes we are tools of the system. The system's really strong like that,
Yeah. And that actually reminds me, when you use that analogy. And by the way, at some point, Gerardo, I need you to make like a playlist for me, because I'm like, I haven't gotten past Run DMC, so I know there's other people that made hip hop after Run DMC. But,
probably
at least 2 people.
Which one is Run and which one is DMC?
My name's McDaniel's, not McDonald's. The Ryan's Hotels, but the burgers are Ronald's. But anyway, that's all I know.
Oh.
Thank you. But what I was going to say is, there are actors that they go, one for the studio, one for me, one for the studio, one for me. And sometimes as teachers, we have to do that. Here's a lesson for the establishment. Here's a lesson for me and the kids. And sometimes we have to find that balance so that we can, I'm going to teach the standard today. Tomorrow, I'm going to teach what I think we should teach, and kind of, and sometimes you can blend those, and sometimes you can do what Mike was talking about and do that. But sometimes you have to kind of go, okay, Today I'm gonna do something for you. Tomorrow we're gonna do something for us.
We brought in hip hop. Sorry, this is my last thing. So the roots, like in Questlove's book, Mo Meta Blues, he talks about how he and Black Thought will have these collaborations where they're like, okay, this album is going to be commercially successful, right? Some booty shaking, some like dance music, right? But then this album is going to be the real work, and so that's a really interesting
Nicolas
thing.
Cage strategy.
Yes.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's why the Roots are on Jimmy Fallon. And I'm still mad about like them being referred to as Jimmy Fallon's house band. I was ready to throw things this morning.
Me too. Oh my gosh, me too. It makes
there's only there's only slight connotations to the word house, right? There's only
yeah. Jimmy Fallon is the Roots halftime entertainment.
Exactly. He's their opening act.
You are the filler between when we get to play. You're welcome, Jimmy.
That's right. Yeah.
All right.
I just wanted to say this one thing, because I know somebody sort of hinted at this before, but I think one of the killers of innovation and changing education and really recreating it and whatever is this idea of, well, it works for you, but right? And so that can be what a teacher says to another teacher. It can be what a school says to another school. It can be what public schools say to innovative independent schools and what they might be doing. It will work for your students, but not for mine, or
the word I've learned recently, that the how aboudisms, right? Are you familiar with how aboudism? Batsheva?
I'm not sure. Tell me.
Okay. So it's
but how about
break down aboudism for us?
Right. Like
how about this? What about
a kid who really likes Eurocentric curriculum? Like what about that?
Well, so but here's part of the problem we're running into though. Like all of those questions lead back to the same thing we started with, was that like, what's something innovative that works for you and your students? And it's honestly it's a problem with the way we run. You said like public schools it's like the military, it's like a prison, it's like whatever. You have to scale it. It has to be scalable, right? Like I don't know if you guys watched the movie about like McDonald's with Michael, what's his name? Michael Keaton.
Right.
Yeah. And so
boyfriend is in that.
Yeah, and so they do this whole thing, but the entire point is that you have this like consistent plan and consistent like process and this whole thing. And when you think about a public school system, at least at a county or division level, and probably at a state level, that's what people are trying to do, right? You're trying to present something that is going to work pretty well for most people in every situation. And so we're talking about something that is incredibly utilitarian. And then we have this cool conversation about what works for us as teachers or works for individual groups of students in a specialized setting. And if somebody's going to turn around and say, yeah, but what about, or that's not going to work with my kids. Okay, then be more creative and find something that will work with your kids. Like the idea that that there's a silver bullet or that everybody has to find the same solution is insane. And the fact that you think you have to do that, and this is actually something, I've got some upcoming podcast episodes about this, but like we're creating like school for dummies. And I don't mean the students are dummies. I mean, the teachers are dummies. Like,
yes,
we're doing things that essentially like there's this sense that we can't trust individual teachers. So we have to sort of lay down, like, here's this curriculum, here are these methods. Hey, we're all going to do this innovative thing, but we all do it together in the same pace at the same time. How innovative is that really? Like if you can roll it out in such a way. And so I just think that sometimes you have to have the confidence to say, like, I'm going to do this thing that works for the kids in the room today. And maybe it won't work next year. And like that, tough luck. Like that's my job to figure it out. And if you can't trust me as the teacher to figure it out, then you shouldn't be paying me to be the teacher in the first place. Like you need better people in the room so you don't feel the need to dummy proof everything. Like that's my biggest frustration.
This money to be a teacher.
Yeah. I don't know. We're dummy proofing things in ways that you know, it's horribly regressive is where we're at.
I think it's really important that we bear in mind that we are preparing students for a future that we don't know, we don't understand. We're equipping them for jobs that aren't there yet. And actually, I was having a conversation with one of my podcast guests about the fact that actually, in the future, computers are going to be able to do all sorts of things that we've actually been teaching our children to do for years in classrooms. Yes. And what we need to start considering is equipping our children for things that computers won't be able to do, because those are going to be the roles that they're going to have to be the roles that they'll carry out. And I think that's really, it's turning things on its head. And no offense, Mealey, but computers are going to be really good at maths.
Oh, definitely.
So
oh my goodness.
Actually,
90% of what I teach can be done without me. Yeah, I've used more computers more and more because and it's just like, no, let's just do it this way. Let's just. And
if I could get back every day that I've spent being taught how to write a bibliography or correct my spelling, I'd be such a happier person.
Yeah. Oh. And actually, we need to be teaching those soft skills. We need to be teaching about communication and interaction and all of those things that, computers aren't able to do. Sorry, I
was going to say the top thing that we need to be teaching, I think, is critical thinking.
Yes. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That is
the biggest thing that's missing. You can see the results of the lack of that from the last 20, 30, 40 years of education, because adults are clueless how to think critically about
which page of the textbook is critical thinking.
Exactly. Well, if you were taking notes, I was actually thinking about this morning about how, teachers who are still having their students take notes, like, well, you need to learn how to take notes on this thing. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, that's not actually a skill you need anymore, right? It's like, you can find out, so you don't need to be lectured anymore at all, because people can just find that stuff out. What you need to show them is, how do you find the information? How do you critically look at the information that's out there to see what's real? How do you question it? Question everything. Right. Like, how do you ask good questions? Students have no idea how to ask good questions. It's like my biggest thing. So
right. I'll say this. I don't want us to miss. I think Ryan made a really important point about scale, and it's like the public school system is really obsessed with scale. I say public school, the traditional school system, private schools and charter schools too. Charter schools, more than traditional public schools, are obsessed with scale.
Yeah.
To where they water the product down. And what you see when businesses, and this is my greatest hope, is that teachers do less of this, right? Less of us being in the same room sharing ideas, and more of us inviting other people along with us, right? Like, where are the startup CEOs, and where are whenever I hire for positions in education, I want to talk to a stay-at-home mom. I want to talk to a failed startup CEO, like somebody who's tried to start 3 things and they've all failed for some reason, and they know exactly why. I want to talk to people outside, like, give me a plumber who's like, I think I want to go teach, right? Like, I want to talk to people from other industries, because that's how you learn what's going to be important in the future, right? Like, and what sort of like just been summed up is like the need to be more human, which is like absolutely so. Like, I think learning to learn is more important than any life skill. Like, if you know how to learn, I met a guy who he built a headset that allows you to control things with your brain waves.
Ooh.
He's legally blind. His name is Zubian Wuta. He's legally blind. He joined the military, went blind, so he started going blind. And at the point where he was legally blind and he could no longer be in the military, he's like, well, now what do I do? So he enrolls in neuroscience courses, and he basically taught himself neuroscience and has built all of these products using his VA benefits, right? Like afterwards. And he was like, Mike, the most important thing in my life has been that I know how to read and that I know how to learn. I know where I can find any piece of information. I know I can piece together. But I think the point that I want to make that,
by the way, I think that's the next Avenger origin story. Just
basically, basically, if he starts working at like Raytheon Technologies, he's going to be the next Iron Man. But the thing that Ryan mentioned is basically like this is something that I fundamentally believe about building ed tech, and I tell this to ed tech founders in any business. When you're small or when you're doing something on a small scale, you should do everything you can that does not scale, that you cannot do when you scale, because that's what creates these really special experiences that people feel like they can't get anywhere else. Like it's really popular for people to rag on WeWork because of how the story like sort of like is ending. But one of the things that WeWork did so well is that every one of them you went to, it was always different because their community managers did something that you, like in DC, they did something for you that they couldn't do in New York City and that they couldn't do in Austin, Texas. And you felt like, oh, this is just for me. So if we can do that for students, like don't worry about down the hall. Yeah, don't get in a little group and everybody copy the same innovation. Like figure out exactly what your students need and want and do what you can do that doesn't necessarily scale. And you'll have, and I'll also say, more things scale than we think. If we're just willing to get uncomfortable and do the work, more things scale than we think. So great point, Ryan.
Okay. So I know we could do this for forever. We could do the whole 8 hours probably like this, honestly. But
it's literally what all of our podcasts are.
What's that?
It's literally what all of our podcasts are. Yeah.
Yeah. So literally we could probably more than 8 hours. So please, guys, whether you're watching this live or you're listening to this as we release it as a podcast and see the stuff in the notes, follow these people, listen to their podcast, hear all these ideas, digest them, share them, and all that kind of stuff. But we promised we were going to play the admin the admin colleague student game.
Hold on. I think you just invented a new app for Mike. Can you do that again?
Yes. That could be your new app there.
Mike, trademark that. That's
trademark.
Yes. So we're going to start with, I know Toria is only here for this roundtable. She's not here for any of the other events in the Edupodlooza, so I want to make sure she plays this now. Some of the other guys will be back later.
Right now it's February. I don't really know how the time differences work.
Yeah, no, basically we're still, it's November actually, but yeah, it's close enough.
Oh wow.
Yes. But anyway, I know that like other people have other opportunities to play this game because we might not get to everybody in the next 20 minutes. We might, I don't know. So Toria, I'm going to start, and then
I'm good on missing out on games though, because I'm really useless at them.
Tudisco, you're going to pick out the next volunteer/victim while I do this with Toria. Okay, so here's the way the game works, Toria. Okay, so it's kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with, but you may be. They probably played over there in England as well. The game kill, marry, and then something. I use the word fornicate, but we know what we're talking about.
Oh,
are you familiar with that game?
Yes.
Okay.
I've never played it, but I've seen it on television shows.
Instead, it's admin, colleague, student, where you have to choose to make them either your administrator, someone that you're going to have as a colleague, or someone that you're going to be your student. Okay?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give you 3 people. So would you like Muppets, superheroes, or
superheroes?
Okay.
Let's go superheroes.
Let's go superheroes here. So I just had them here. I'm scrolling through these things. Okay. So you've got, are you familiar with the Marvel?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Love Marvel.
So you've got Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, and Captain Marvel. And you have to make one of them your admin, one of them your colleague, and one of them your student. Go ahead.
Oh, God.
And you can explain why. Oh, we just lost 2 people.
Right. So my student would be Ant-Man, because I just find Ant-Man, yes, he just needs to learn a lot, basically. You know, when it comes to superheroes, he's just not got it down pat compared to some of the others. The others are yes, streets ahead of him. So Ant-Man, definitely student. A colleague would have to be Dr. Strange. He would be my science, you know, he'd be teaching the science department. And then my admin would have to be Captain Marvel, because Captain Marvel is the superhero that I just think is absolutely brilliant. And I would absolutely love to work under her.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay. Well, some people are taking a break because of my mouth is broken and it's only hour 2. So some people are taking a break because they are participating in a lot of the Edupodlooza. I didn't anticipate that when I started the game, but we just roll with the punches. So Tudisco, your choices as to who you choose next are relatively limited. So go ahead.
Well, why don't we throw the same question to Ryan and Sandrine?
Yeah.
Sandrine, you go ahead.
No, but Tudisco, but give them new Tudisco, give them new people to choose from, though.
Do you think we'll burn out our list, though?
No.
Okay. Well, hold on. Sandrine, would your answers be different? Would your answers be different?
They would be.
Okay, go ahead.
Go on then, Sandrine.
I think I would put, oh man, this is kind of tough, but I'm thinking I would put Captain Marvel as the student.
Really?
Yeah, because I think she also has a lot to discover and maybe looking at things in different ways and learning.
But do you not feel she learned quite a bit over the course of the film? She learned quite a bit, so she moved on incredibly far from where she was initially.
She learned, yes. Yeah. She
would be the best student. Like if you're trying to make your own job easy, make her the student. Like that's because she's gonna play along pretty well.
Okay.
I don't know. I think
get in trouble for beating up bullies.
Some point, yeah, she's gonna rebel at some point. It's not a 100%, but that's where I would put her. I think I would keep the same colleague. I think I would, just because I love him and I would want to work with him. Then I could talk to him a lot. And I'd put Ant-Man as the admin because he's crazy enough that he will go with any crazy idea that we have. And so anything innovate, that's kind of where I'm going, really. It all revolves around him. I'm putting him as admin because any crazy idea I want to go and try, he'd be like, what the hell? Sure, let's do it. Let's see what happens.
It's good. You know, honestly, the only one that I'm completely set on is that Dr. Strange has to be the colleague, because he would be the most impossible student, right? Because he's always going to know better than you. And he'd be a terrible admin because he also always knows better than you.
Oh, his observations be brutal.
So like he has to be the coworker where I can just be like, all right, cool, man, go in your room and do your thing. You can't put him in either of the other places because he's insufferable in either one of those roles. We could argue about flipping the other two. But no one wants Dr. Strange
because they wouldn't want to be there.
But unless they really like him, and then they'll love being there. Like that's a love or hate. I'm just saying, like, I don't want that guy telling me how to do my job. And if we're being really honest about it, he's smart enough to figure it out on his own. He doesn't really need me as a teacher.
But this is why you want him, though, because then in your post observation, he could walk through all the different permutations with you of your lesson and go, well, see, if you had done this, then this would have turned out. And no, what if you had done this and done this? And he could walk you through.
Man. And halfway through that, I start throwing hands like,
I'd have an anxiety attack
during the observation, and you would see it and you're like, oh, I am screwing this so badly. And he knows what I should have done. And it's going to take me however long to figure that one out.
Yeah.
Too much pressure. Yeah.
You're bombing the observation, and then you find out it's all just a spelly cast in a mirror dimension, and none of it really happened, and now you know how you might fail, and that's in your mind.
Yeah, I'm like, you can argue the other two, but nobody wants to put Doctor Strange above or below here. Like,
So Ryan, where would you put the other two?
I don't know. I liked your answer a lot, and then Sandrine stepped in, and now I'm like, now I like her answer a lot. I think, as it turns out, I just think that Ant-Man is like the easiest one of all of them to work with. So I want him to be my boss because he doesn't care what I do, and I want him to be my student because he's adventurous enough to play along. But no, I would, if I had to pick, Captain Marvel would be the admin, because there's a clear like sense of purpose. Like that's all I really ask of people. And if anyone who listens to the podcast, you hear like over and over, I go back to like, why are we doing this? Like, we can disagree. And if you have a clear vision, you have a clear sense of purpose, and you're making decisions in accordance with that purpose, I can play along even when I disagree. But when someone flip-flops, or they're not entirely sure what they're doing, or they're making decisions just to make someone else happy, and I never get to talk to that person, like, I personally have a lot of trouble with that. Like, we all need to know what we're trying to do, and then we can make good decisions about how to do it. So I would put Captain Marvel and the admin because she's purposeful and clear. And I would put Ant-Man in the classroom because it would be a lot of fun. But as I already said, Doctor Strange is not going to be easy to work with in any of the other capacities. So I'll take him as the colleague who throws some cool ideas at me once in a while. And then I get to go in my room and not have to have that as either oversight or, whatever. I like both of your answers. So I'm torn, but I am dead set. Dr. Strange cannot be my principal or my student.
Can I ask an extension question?
Yes.
Which of those three would you like to have as a teacher? If you could choose one, you have to have one. You can't not have one. You have to have one.
Dr. Strange. If I was a student, who would I want to be my teacher?
Yeah.
I'd want Dr. Strange.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd want Ant-Man because I was a really lazy student, and I know I can get him off on tangents. Nice. He'd be the teacher. I'd be like, yo, man, just bring up the quantum realm, and he'll be talking for like 30 minutes. We won't even have the test today.
Yeah, no, I as the student, I want someone teaching me who I am very confident is smarter than I am, and who's confident in what he's doing. And he might be overconfident at times, but yeah, I would take him as my teacher. But that's the same reason I want him as my teacher is the reason I don't want him in the other roles when I'm a teacher next door.
See, and we're talking, I'm university level, so I'm having to figure out which one of those, where am I going? Because as a high school student, I'm on board with Ant-Man. Like, and I came from a French school system, so A's didn't exist. I'm down with Ant-Man. Now I'm at the university in the US. You better believe I want Dr. Strange because I want my money's worth.
There you go.
That's right.
And again, French mindset. And through my whole schooling, all my universities, well, not all of it because I had some in France, but all of my diplomas come from the US. And I was telling that to my daughter yesterday. I was so upset with all of my professors or instructors who were phoning it in. They were like, we are here. Oh, well, we're leaving 30 minutes early today. We're leaving an hour early today. Class canceled. And everybody was like, yeah. And I'm like, no, I just paid $2,000 for this class. If I'm lucky,
the only class I ever wanted canceled was Friday before 10 a.m. Like I want every class. I could count in 4 years of undergrad. I could count on these fingers how many classes I missed. Like I went in ill, tired, whatever. Like I'm paying for it. I'm there. Hit me with an 8 o'clock Friday morning. You can cancel that one. That one's okay. Like, but yeah. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I think Dr. Strange is the teacher among them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Tudisco. So give Ryan some choices.
Oh, geez.
All right, Ryan. So
I liked going last time. That was way easier.
All right. So here's what we got. You ready? We have Looney Tunes. We have The Matrix. And we have Famous Chris's.
I'm going to go I think the first two are actually probably going to be better, but I'm just so curious. Hit me with the Famous Chris's, and
all right.
I have no idea where that's going to go. So give me that one.
So here are your three. All right. One has to be your admin, one's your colleague, and one's a student in your class. Chris Rock, Chris Pratt, Chrissy Teigen.
Chrissy Teigen. She's
Who's
the
that last one?
she's like a social media. Was she an actress?
Yeah.
Model?
Yeah, she was like a supermodel. And
right? Yeah.
She's married
Now
to
she's just like a
John Legend.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No. When you
Just
said
not
it,
all
I
that
wasn't sure.
trouble.
I'm like, wait, I know who that is. Oh, geez. So Chris Rock, Chris Pratt, Chrissy Teigen. I think that's tricky. I think I want Chris Rock to be the principal again, just because he's very direct and he's pretty clear. Like, you listen to like when he does stand up, when it's not just the one-off jokes, like when he actually puts together sort of a real monologue. He's a guy who knows what he wants to say and why he wants to say it. And I think that's appreciated in the leadership position. Chris Pratt and Chrissy
Rock, because they're messing around, they're going to be terrified.
Yeah, I don't know, or they're gonna laugh hysterically. But either way, like they're out of my room for a minute, we can reset. Yeah, I don't know. The other two are almost interchangeable. I don't know enough about either one of them's personalities. I'm gonna take Chris Pratt as the fellow teacher. Just the little bit I've seen of him, he seems friendly and whatever, and I can ignore it. And Chrissy Teigen seems pretty outspoken, right? And so I like students that speak up. But who are still sort of open and friendly about it. And again, very limited sample size, but she seems like a person who would be open to a conversation and willing to participate in it. So I think I would take her as the student and Chris, but maybe flip those, but I'm pretty sure Chris Rock needs to be the principal in this one.
Okay. Does anyone else want to chime in on those, or do we want to give Sandrine her own one that wasn't that was unique to Disco?
Sure.
Looney Tunes.
Looney Tunes? All right, Sandrine.
Matrix.
I was really tempted with that one, but I thought the Chris's is curious,
I'm glad you went with the Chris's, because I was like, I don't know where that's going, and I'm horrible with
Chrissy
names.
Teigen in your class, you just have to worry about the cyberbullying. But all right, so here are your Looney Tunes characters. Ready? Bugs Bunny, Daffy, and Elmer Fudd.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Bugs Bunny is a smartass.
Yes.
Daffy Duck can't make up his mind.
He's already a principal.
And Elmer Fudd.